perception neuron. I sent you guys a link for it inside of the syllabus that last week to the Unreal blog. There's two different plugins. This is the official one, or it became the official one. So use my link. Don't just search for it. The other one actually comes up first in all the Google searches, and it causes problems. So this is the one that is vetted by me. It has the documentation, which is fantastic, and then it has an SVN, which we'll go over today what SVN is, or it's a Dropbox, and you could download a sample project from each engine version, and then start with that template so that you're not starting from scratch every time. And I already have one installed here. And we're going to open up Axis Neuron first. So this is the interface you guys saw when you're trying to calibrate stuff. And it comes with some scenes already built in. So we have master lose performance. All right, so we just kind of scrub through that. That's pretty awesome. All right. So there's one thing to note here. If I hit play, make it loop and play. So now it's kind of endlessly cycling the back. And from your guys' experience, you can see how well each of the neurons are tracking. And then they actually use an OptiTrack system for absolute positioning of their stuff. They have just like huge stores of OptiTrack wide-angle cameras that they use, like a 4 to 8 camera system, just to get absolute positioning for the hips or whatever. And that's why they said absolute position like that. One of the main things to pay attention to here is this has been given a name, char00, and if it's not char00 in these default scenes, it'll be avatar00. I don't know if you notice these things, but if these are not do not match the perception neuron plugin, that could be where your blockage is of data. So to turn on the broadcasting of data, I went to my settings tab and I went to broadcast. And the important thing to note is that I'm sending it over UDP. This is the default. I haven't touched anything, right? This is what is by default. I'm just going to grab it, what it tells me to do. UDP, this is my local host. I can also say this is the IP of my computer, but this is, if I'm sending it locally, it's 127.0.0.1 or the word localhost. And then it's being sent on port 7002. All right. And first of all, it can be sent in many formats. I know it has this other port thing here. Just kind of ignore this one. We'll prove it. We'll search between both of them and prove which way it's coming. And then you're going to be sending binary to the plugin. Not something I would recommend reading. It doesn't really make sense for us. But you can also export. One of the reasons why I love this software is you can export it though as a string, as a human readable way of looking at the data. So if I say, okay, let's take a look at it, and I go to one of my friends, MaxMSP, which you're going to get into in week 8 more for live show control, I can put in that port 7002. Oops. And let's get rid of this. And don't worry, I'll go over this interface later on. I just want to kind of prove a point right now. And I'm just going to kind of dump out all this data into this big message box. If I say open 7002, there we go. I'm now getting 180 data points, and this is what our friends were using when they turned the figure into an instrument. They're using these values, and their project was almost mainly in Max with a little bit of vector math. The first two items being that it's character index 0, and the name is char00, and then from this is 3 points of rotation position for each major node in the body. So not really important for the plugin. I just wanted to show you that this is sending out real data. If I then switch this over to sending out the ASCII, or sorry, the binary. Yeah, it says though. It does not compute. So there's two different modes there. But when we go to the plugin, I'm going to close Max now and open up that Unreal project, which as a huge no-no, they left it as a default my project. No one's ever going to do that here in this class. We're always going to give unique and purposeful names for our projects. They left theirs as the default my project. And this is what I put in the Slack channel for last week or under demos. Maybe it's under demos channel. This is a default project with like an avatar and the plugin already installed. It's the simplest way to get up and running. And did anyone get the plugin working, streaming live? No? Okay, I'm going over that.
Can you go over the parameters from the Access Neuron plugin as well? Because you have to go in preferences and make sure it's like set streaming to
You mean the broadcast stuff I just did?
Oh, then I'll sorry.
So yeah, settings, and we're broadcasting on UDP, and here's our port. This is the default settings. You just need to know what it is so you can pick it up on the other side, which is over. Oh, I have two. Which one do I want today? Let's go with just one. All right, so I have here a the plugins window in Unreal is right here, and I can search for perception neuron. There it is. The perception neuron, which is part of my project. It's not installed in my engine, just inside this one project, and it's enabled. If I want to look in my Explorer, I can see that I have a plugins folder now, and this plugin's already put in. We can just grab this plugin and put it into a plugins folder for another project, and then that would work as well. Then we'd have to make sure we enable it. All right, so we're sitting data in, and this has been enabled. And this is the default scene that's already been set up, and it is a animation blueprint, which we might have seen with the Icona plugin. Where we just look for a new pose calculation, and this is what's going to be hilarious. If anyone saw me do the bone mapping with Icona live action, you know the whole thing where you say the hips equal to hips and the arms equal to arms and whatever. This thing just does it automatically. When you bring it in, it just says, oh yeah, I've seen that this is hips and this is whatever. That whole thing is right here. So from scratch, we're just saying new pose calculation, and then it just, when I hit enter, it's just going to bring it up, and it just did it again. Here's all the mappings, and some of them won't be valid if they don't have the right names, and we might have to go in and clean up some of the stuff, but I've never had it. It just works. So this is the cool thing about that. So this is how it's getting its data. But you see it's not running. We can't preview it here because we don't have the code to receive the data stream. That happens kind of in this perception neuron thing. All right, so we have an avatar blueprint, which, as we saw with the other stuff, is just basically a skeletal mesh that is referring to the animation blueprint. And then we have a component that, since we've added in this plugin, perception neuron, we have a component now for perception neuron, and this is just bringing in some information inside of our scene. Nothing here yet. We load this avatar into our scene, and there's the plugin. And we have two things, just like the OptiTrack plugin. We have our Neuron Manager, which is telling us what port we're getting it from. And then this avatar blueprint, we're just saying, what is it called? And our avatar name is char00. All right. So this is a live data stream between the two pieces of software. And I know some people said they got BVH data to work. So that's just saying file, export, and exporting a BVH file right here, BioVision data. And then instead of doing live streaming, we can import that text file and load that in right here instead. And because you have the perception neuron plugin, you can now import BVH data into Unreal, which is super cool for other uses and stuff like that. You can now, if BVH, a .bvh file is a file extension now natively understood by Unreal. So I think it's a effective plugin for hacking and debugging stuff. Let me see if I can really quickly bring in a different character, and let's do it through Scratch. Let me see if I just have something downloads. Probably knowing my demos is something completely really ugly or unique. Let's just say unique. Okay, female base mesh. That's simple enough. So from scratch, really quick, bringing this in without any animations. Great. I'm going to right click on the skeleton to make an animation blueprint. AVP mesh. I don't know why that opened up. There we go. And then I just say new pose calc. Or if I right click, I could find probably perception neuron listed here. Boom, new pose calc. Only thing it does, but it does it well. We check. Everything's kind of mapped up already. I'm going to make a blueprint. Actor. VP mesh. Bring in this skeletal mesh. Sorry, this skeletal mesh right here. It's context sensitive, it knows. Link up the animation blueprint, which I think I called it this. There we go. Bring in a perception neuron thing. Let's spell things right. There we go. And make sure I have the right name, which was char00. Let's hit play. Up and running. So there's one more tool for debugging and looking at data in real time.
Hold on, when you were setting up the blueprint for that most recent prototype, you said you linked the animation blueprint inside of that?
Yeah.
What were you doing?
Sure. I have a skeletal mesh here, and then it says animation mode. It's using this animation blueprint right here, which is this animation blueprint that I created from the incoming data and the bone mapping. And you know, I just did that, so I'm screen recording that. But also in this documentation on here, these videos go over everything I do in even greater detail. I think it's like a 25-minute video that spends a little more time on it. So yeah, it's a cool way of doing things if you get to do some things in the first place, which I understand and feel your pain. So I want to get into a little bit about source control and sharing things over the cloud or having a local backup, being able to recover your work, especially as we're learning how to merge work together, becomes kind of really important to be able to recover anything that gets lost or broken. So we can revert back to states of, oh, everything we did today is crap, or just this one file got corrupted, but everything else was project is fine. Can we just revert this one file back and all that kind of stuff? And there's a lot of great things in Unreal that are built in for version control. You might have seen the source control button here, right here. So like, oh, connects to source control. So I can literally have my interface connected to my Git repo in real time, and you can check files out and do version control while running Unreal. I find this slows down the interface. And if you're not using a desktop that's like a beast, don't do it live. Do it only when you're done working for it in like a day or hour sections or something like that. Don't do it in real time. It'll just slow you down. The whole interface will kind of lock up a little bit. But Unreal uses 3 different kinds of version control, and literally it's kind of built into the system, which is why, again, Unreal is built for AAA gaming engines. It's something for teams of 20 to 250, like doing at the same time. I don't use the Git too much. Perforce is the most recent one that everyone kind of uses. I use Subversion, which is super old but free. So it's still an oldie but a goodie. I'm going to say I'm going to run without source control, and I'm going to show you what Subversion or SVN is. I use DreamHost for hosting. It was recommended to me by IT peers when I started ITP because it has some, it's like really easy to deploy certain kind of integrations like Ruby and SVN and that kind of stuff. For me, over my goodies tab, I have a thing called Subversion, and I pay, I don't know, like $33 a year or a month or something that's reasonable, and I have absolutely unlimited online cloud storage with this. Subversion is like, it's free, like in free beer and free lunch. So here's like all the projects I've probably ever worked on and some other class stuff. I just come here and I say, this is Bodies in Motion 2017. The project ID is also probably Bodies in Motion. So this is going to be my URL. I'm on toddbryant.com, there it is. So this will be my URL. And I'm going to go ahead, and every person who's on my team, I can give a username and password. I'm just going to create Todd and spacebar, and then it'll be BIM 123. There you go. And that's it. I'm going to create a new repository, and this is going to take like 10 minutes, or maybe not even 10 minutes, to propagate through into my servers, and it will send me an email saying you're ready to go. And while we're doing that, I'm going to show you guys how to start thinking about your projects with Subversion. When using Windows, a Subversion client, just like Git has its own kind of download desktop client, the one for Windows is Tortoise SVN, and it's free. And it is, there's like entire books written on this software. We won't get that deep into it, but it's been used for a while, a lot of people, so it's still relevant, even though Perforce is being adopted more by current companies. That costs money, and we want to stay as free as possible since we're doing schoolwork. I'm going to post that into your, I made a week 6 channel, so here's that. And then going back to this. All right, so I just got an email from my dream host saying that my Subversion thing is now ready. So we can start using Tortoise and start locking in a project to the cloud. There's a really handy dandy thing I'll put a link for as well. There's a UE for SVN, SVN being short for Subversion, and there is a guide for using Subversion as your source control. Here we go. And there's actually some interesting information here that will help us out with just sharing projects in general. I think Lizzie, you and I did that today, where we said which folders aren't important. And let's kind of skip some of the stuff. This is the graphic I like right here. So if we open up our Unreal project, you'll see that there's a lot of other things like if you've been making executables, there'll be a build folder. It's a bunch of junk you don't need. There's a save folder, which is crash logs, screenshots, things you don't need. These things highlighted in green are the only things you need to commit to a source control, or are the only things you need to zip up if you're sharing it over a USB drive or putting it into your Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. So this save folder can get to be gigabytes big if your project is crashing a lot, or if you're taking a lot of screenshots or recording video. So this is how to keep your file sizes down by understanding the different folder structure. Like one thing we might include maybe be like a plugins folders in here, and we might be including a plugin. We can install plugin either in the project if we're keeping it all with one operating system ecosystem. If we're going to be using like Mac and Windows, I install plugins into my actual engine so that we don't have to have a plugins folder and it will work just natively no matter what you're doing. So let's go check out and see if that URL exists for me, which was, let's see, it says it'll be ready in a second. Let's refresh. Yeah, whatever. And we called it Bodies in Motion 2017. If I want to edit and add more members, I can add more members here and everything, but it should be good to go. And the URL is here. Click on it. It's going to be empty. It looks like it's still trying to go through and propagate, but that'll be fine. We can start without it. All right. So I'm going to take a look real quick at my data drive, and I have all these Unreal projects. And right here, you see these little exclamation points in this green arrow. These are Subversion projects, and it's telling me I need to either download or upload to match the online repository. So it's a context-sensitive system for telling you where your project's at. But also, before we even get to going online, while we're waiting for it to propagate through, what's important to know is we can also just do a local repository so that we're just storing our own project locally and not even worrying about having it online, which of course this will be the most free and the easiest and the least time consuming. I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to call this SVN test. SVN test. And here I can actually create a repository here. I just say OK. And what this is like it's like Fort Knox. This is like a fortress that I can't even read. That is now a database. So that is my repository. I'm going to go up a level, but there's nothing there. I'm going to call this new folder working copy. And I can help you guys set up your stuff. I just want to show it to you so you know it exists. Like again, like a lot of things, I'm demoing it for you. And then if you want, we can spend time in office hours one-on-one teaching you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out from that repository. Boom. For my SVN test. I don't know if you guys can see that because it's a little small. Basically, I'm saying that my repository is locally. It's like the next folder over. And I want to make it here in this project. Let's say OK. There's an error. Why would that be? Please enter URL here. Otherwise, just go online. There's a way of doing this too, though. It's a URL to local. Oh, do I have to use this? Okay, so I'm at revision 0. All right, and if I was able to see hidden folders, would have like this little .svn thing. I can now take my perception neuron demo that I've been working on that's open right here. Sure, save all that stuff. And I can grab the important folders, which is the project name, plugins, and content configuration. And I copy those, come back to my Unreal Projects SVN. Now you can see that it has, this is the icon for, this is my repository, and this is the icon for my working copy. Right now it's at version 0 and there's no problem whatsoever. So I'm just copying it in. And all I have to do is just add it. And say these are new things. SVN is, Tortoise SVN is a shell script, meaning that now if I right click on things, you guys see all the SVN properties. I'm going to say add these to my repo. Add them. Cool. So you might not get into this stuff immediately, but I'm have it recorded for you should you get there later on. If I open up this project again, it's going to make those saved folders. These things that remember I don't care about. And so in the same way, I'm going to add to my ignore list, and now it'll never upload. If I forget about it, it'll just never upload those folders or ignored. Great. And now with these two being ignored and these being added, I right click and just say commit. Do everything I just told you to do, and there it goes. So I now have, I didn't actually put it, I actually didn't write any text to myself. Normally I'd say, this is what I added, this is what I took away, this is all the things. So when you guys can read your log, you can see where everything is. So I'm doing a local version control system now, where I can recover individual files, individual folders, or the entire project. Every time I commit, it makes another list of all the different files. I can commit just a single file, or I can commit the entire project every single time. This creates maybe a little bit of redundancy, but it can save your project in the end. You'll always have at least the initial commit that you can come back to. So this is important as you start integrating things with each other. If I was doing online, it'd be the same thing, but instead of saying D would be my URL, and then I'll be pushing and pulling up line. So this is now at revision number 1, and these things all have checkboxes because everything is now committed. with the time we have left, I'm just going to show you one other way of working together as groups. So now this is on my SVN, but we also know about, yeah, go ahead.
Would you recommend each person in the group should be in
The, the online stuff? Yeah, I mean, early on,
like SVN versus Git, like would you
oh, well, they go to they kind of go to different places.
Yeah.
Like Git would go to actual GitHub. Yeah, and it might not be important for your groups, but this might be important. Like every job I do, this is like discussed in the first day, and I want you guys to know that it exists. You're like, oh yeah, I may have it at my most recent projects that I've been working by myself, but yeah, you know, you jump right in and you're familiar with this kind of stuff. And there's one of the comments I've gotten on the class evaluations is that I discussed this too late, and so I want to do it before we do it, so that you guys have in your mindset and decide whether or not you do it as a group, because it does get a little bit acclimating, and you're not using many features of it, but it is another piece of software that I'm bringing on you guys every week. So okay, here we're going. We have this one level. I want to talk to you guys about the idea of streaming levels or sub levels. Okay, so we did a style guide last week, and there's these naming conventions about how you name all the different files so that we can all be using the same kind of naming conventions, like materials. You know, this is a skeletal mesh where you say it's sk_Bob, materials m_Bob. All this kind of stuff is kind of useful to get to know, and it was told to me before I even opened up the Unreal Engine that this is something worth knowing. But there's also ways of subdividing out levels. You can have actual levels that are sitting on top of each other that just hold particle effects and just hold light and just hold audio. And these things can be opened up by different people. If I'm in charge of meshes, somebody else is in charge of programming, somebody else is in charge of something else. You're all working in the same level, but they're sub-levels of the main level. So let's talk about that really quickly. What are these things? We've seen levels, or aka maps, and there's one thing called the persistent level. Now we might have wondered why I'm saying our level blueprint was the persistent thing. This is the thing that never goes away. It is the persistent thing. Inside this level might be any communication with like plugins and like my skylight or something. But oftentimes my persistent level is empty because everything I'm doing is actually in the sub levels that are things like just the geometry, just the blueprints, just the lighting, and just the audio. You can have, these are just suggestions. Kind of if you're doing different roles, and one person's always doing the skeletal meshes, then let them load in that level, and that way you're not all checking out the persistent level together. No one's checking out the persistent level. You all have your own projects. So even my VR projects, everything, this is the way we set it up, and this is the way it's kind of done at all the studios as well. So it's cool to know that it's a thing. I'm going to show you a little bit about that workflow, and then we'll move on to that and take a break. So I have one map that's called test map, okay?
So then at the very end, you would use your levels?
No, you leave them as streaming levels.
Okay.
And the persistent level will then call and to the other levels. Yeah. So this is just a cool built-in kind of feature. This is also being used for really long levels where you need to unload and load on things that have lots of geometry. If you go into the content example, there's a way of looking at this instead of being on top of each other, which we're doing more for VR, where we're not really exploring like a game, where we're more just kind of like in the same standing space or same room scale space. When you think about like a giant open world experience, you can think about streaming levels as a way of choosing your map, turning it to a grid, and compartmentalizing each different section. So here's the content examples. Some people didn't see how you can navigate this. It kind of tells you right here or down here. Just open up the different levels, and the content example has all this cool stuff. And it's literally, I always think that I know everything, and then I'm having a question. I look for 2 days, and then I realize, oh, it's here all along. So I'm going to look at streaming levels, which is streaming levels in its own folder. Those are the streaming levels. Let's go back up. 1 second, guys. Got to find it. Level streaming. What an appropriately named file. There we go. Human readable. So let's go ahead and play in my selected viewport, and we'll see that there's nothing there. Well, it is there. It's just waiting for me to hit a trigger box, right? I hit a trigger box. Now it's loading them and also unloading them. So this is a very visual way of seeing how these different things can be used for level streaming, for like, you know, making things seem simple, more simple. Like each of these sublevels we worked on individually along the way. There we go. So that's another way of doing it. But for us, let's say we have a bunch of different levels. We have, we're working in my project, but also I want to take this, let's see, what's something else we're working on? We'll just load in the starter content. We can migrate our projects together. But for me, I'm just going to bring in the starter content. I forgot to bring in the starter content. Okay, add it in now. So now I'm adding 650 megabytes of materials and stuff to my project, and also a bunch of other levels. Great. So if I was being smart with this, I would probably have an assets folder. And then in my assets folder, I'd have a maps or levels folder. All right. And then according to the style guide, the first level is P, which is persistent, and then project. All right. This is my project, and it is dead empty. There's nothing here. All right, great. And if I bring up my window, there's a levels window. All right, and it just has my persistent level. I kind of like to dock it kind of here, and then I could say let's add an existing, and let's bring in test map. Test map is now loaded inside of my persistent level. Over here, I could say only show me things that are in my current level, which is test map. You see it's highlighted blue and it's bold there. You might not be able to see it that well. If I double click on persistent level, you see how everything disappeared? Because I said only show me things in world outliner that are in the current level. These are the ways of navigating this kind of stuff. Okay, that's cool. So I have this thing here. Let's bring in another level. I'm sure that in my starter content I had a maps folder, and I can bring in the starter map. All right, so it's adding the starter map to here. And now I have the starter map on top of there as well. Right? So this could be, I brought in everyone's meshes, I brought in everyone's programming and my level blueprints, all that kind of stuff. What's also cool is by being able to refine what I'm only seeing what is in the current level that's selected, I could take this test map. Look, where to go? I don't know. Let's take all these things. There they are. Fantastic. And let's move them. So you guys are over here, and you guys are over here. Now I can switch levels. Control A, there's everything there. I'll move you guys over here. So there's a way of navigating all these different assets. All right, I'm going to bring in another level. And of course, you're going to get some redundancy. You're going to have multiple sky spheres or multiple post processes. So it's kind of smart to think about it as you build them, not from scratch, instead of just bringing in other people's stuff. What else do we have? We have minimal default, which is just our Ames chairs. All right, so let's take our Ames chairs. I said take our Ames chairs. There we go. And then we're going to party with those guys over here. Cool. So this is a way of kind of navigating that. And by default, and then we can also, like, what was in what, we can take them off, turn them off. Right? And then by default, they're not on. So you have a couple of settings about the visibility, and make sure that by default, if I hit play, it'll be black, because none of them have been told to be on in the level blueprint. This is just the way they are in the editing mode. Come back. So just on my persistent level, on event begin play, I'm going to say open or stream level. or something like that. That's not it. And that way it knows to turn on when it begin play level. Load level, unload level, open level. I guess it's just open level. I thought it was stream load level, stream level. There you go. So I want to make sure that test map is included. Test map, and make visible after load. And so whereas before it was completely black when I hit the play button, now just that one is there. So if you were wanting to turn them off and on trigger boxes and all that kind of stuff, this is how you navigate having multiple streaming levels and stuff like that. So anyway, that's all I want to get into. Let's take like a 10-minute break. We'll post the class groups on the screen. We'll kind of make some spaces for you guys to hang out and get to know each other, and select time to come hang out this weekend, and we'll be around.